or about a minute after the hour, and let's get it going. Hi, folks. My name is Jay Emerlinson. I am a global evangelist here at Software AG and a specialist in the Eris platform. I've been with the company for quite a long time, but I've been doing process intelligence, or at least process related work, for a lot longer than that. I come originally from manufacturing engineering and process engineering, and when I discovered the Eris platform, it changed my life. So call me one of the converted. Meanwhile, I'm joined by my friend Eric Groovers. Eric, why don't you introduce yourself to our folks out there?
Hi, everyone. This is Eric. I head up business development in Software AG for Eris and Alphabet. And I've been in process now for more than 20 years, I think, a little bit longer. And joined the Eris world in 2003 as a customer, and then in 2006 as part of the notorious IdeaShare company. Yes, long history with Eris
for a while. I love it.
Absolutely.
Well, those are our bona fides, folks. If you believe us, don't believe us, that's fine. This is an opportunity for a spirited debate. So today's topic, we'll be looking at the idea of demystifying process intelligence. What does that mean for a lot of folks? We want to set out some terms and some conditions before we even get into some of the myths today. We're going to look at myths and misconceptions around process intelligence. Now, from my perspective, process intelligence incorporates a lot of different components. And so if you're looking at this sort of the iceberg of how you do process transformation inside an organization, process intelligence is about taking this whole picture and putting it together instead of just looking at the top section, which is really the execution of your business. Process intelligence brings together that information, does something with it, helps you transform how it can go, so changing your stars, and then being able to communicate those solution designs. Rather than spending more time just running your business, you think about what you should do and why. So from my perspective, process intelligence incorporates a lot of communication between each of those pillars above and below the waterline of this iceberg. Whether or not you take a look at it from the perspective of execution data and data analysis, iterative data analysis, to try and understand how your business is actually performing, responses to that, and actions you can take to correct said performance issues. Then the ability to improve on how you do things, ideas, designs, this idea of putting all this data in context. I like to say that data may be king, but context is its crown. And getting validation and consensus with a wide variety of stakeholders from across the business, which means you're looking to do design, blueprinting for a future state that you want in the context of the organization and strategy that you're looking to achieve. Iterate on that with a wide variety of stakeholders and contributors, and then ultimately roll that out as part of blueprints and standard operating procedures that you put out to a larger community, and in fact get feedback from them. Then they run the process and the cycle continues. We think of this as a truly connected process improvement lifecycle that is driven by evidence. But I gotta say, this is one piece that I took a look at. Eric, any other things you want to talk about when you look at sort of defining the terms for our conversation today?
Yeah, the funny thing is that process intelligence, for those of you who have been in the business only for a few years, it might look like yet another buzzword. You sent me an article a couple of days ago about someone being a little bit critical about the new term process intelligence, because it's more of the same. It's we've seen it already. It's a repackaging of something that we've already been doing for a while. And this was an article from 2009, and this was an article where. Which was, Loki's criticizing when IdeaShare introduced the term process intelligence, as part of the Eris suite. And the question at the time really was, so what actually is process intelligence bringing to the table in addition to business intelligence, to other kinds of, other analytical capabilities? And it's a fair question. And now that it has been sort of dusted off and relaunched into the market, it is a fair question to ask: what is process intelligence exactly, and what does it bring? What are the benefits of process intelligence in addition to or instead of other analytics methodologies? And
Here's the thing, Eric. I think a lot of the first misconception we're going to talk about today, and you've been alluding to it, is that process intelligence is just BI 2.0, right? It's just
Mhm.
business intelligence. And a lot of people come to me and ask that exact question. I already have dashboards that tell me, how my business is performing. What is
Mhm.
process intelligence and why is it different from that? And do I even need it? I have a great set of, insert your name of dashboard company here. Dashboards,
Mhm.
they're a control panel for my company. Process intelligence just sounds like another thing to tack on that's not really any different. So differentiates these things for me, Eric. I'm going to challenge you on this one. Wait, BI and PI, why are they not the same thing?
Well, I think PI is far more focused, obviously, on gathering analytics around specifically around processes and providing insights into processes, whereas business intelligence is a lot. So there's two ways you can go with this. You can say, well, process intelligence is about processes and business intelligence is about everything else, or, and this is how I would like to see it, process intelligence is one area of business intelligence. You can look at individual systems, you can get your analytics from individual systems, and you can correlate that data to get better insights. One specific way of correlating data across different systems is to look at the process that runs across those systems.
Mm-hmm.
And rather than just correlating data from individual systems, why don't you look directly at the process as it is being captured and tracked in event logs across the systems and across process automation technologies. So it just provides an additional perspective, and I think one that is which is was not only important 15 years ago, it is even more important nowadays, with the importance of processes and lateral collaboration across functions and organizations. Process intelligence is even more important than it was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. What I like to think about when I think about process intelligence versus BI is I often see BI as an aggregation of business data and the performance that it implies. So financial performance, NPS, customer feedback, these sorts of things that give you an overall picture of what the effect is of your business on its success in the market and its customers and its internal performance in terms of like leaning out the organization, making it operate efficiently. BI as a tool is great, just as a standalone platform that helps you sort of get a temperature for how your business is performing. But it's not really actionable directly in a process sense. A lot of
Mhm.
BI is giving you an overall picture of something you're going to have to figure out a lever to change. Whereas process intelligence as a concept is not that general aggregated view, but it's actually a granular view into what actually happened.
Yeah.
And so as a result of that, you have a much more direct lever to change things. When I see process step X, process step Y happened on day, time, and then we went an exception over here, and I can see step by step what occurred, and I can see where the bottleneck happened, or I can see where the variation happened. I'm taking not just an overall view of things, I'm taking a very specific view of things that allows me to immediately take action on that. Okay, so saying, well, last year we performed 20% under our target for revenue. How do I change that? Do I just do I go and yell, sell more things? Versus I saw last year 20% of our exception processes required manual touch. Oh, okay. Well, that's something I can directly affect to say, how can we reduce that number of minutes required, or how do I implement something like RPA to make that manual step a little bit faster so that I can directly improve the performance of this one
Yeah,
process?
absolutely. I think, again, it makes complete sense to put sensors into your various different systems to
Mhm.
monitor your resource performance in and by itself. It makes complete sense. What
And it's
process
been done for
intelligence?
years in the
Yeah.
physical sense. You think about like I come from manufacturing engineering.
Mhm.
Having like our machines on the line monitored so we can see the performance of our physical manufacturing line
Yes,
made tons of sense. Our
absolutely.
digital line makes tons of sense as well. In fact, that's something that's a validated methodology in the physical manufacturing space. So we've moved to the digital, and it's also not new. This is an old concept, but yet still people get sucked down in
Yeah.
B.
Exactly. So I think that
Please.
the key thing here is that we need to have complete visibility of our operating model in order to understand how can we improve it or how can we address problems. And if you look at the individual resources, like your salespeople, like, are we going to yell? Of course, we have to yell at our salespeople. It's a no-brainer. But we also need to understand the inner workings of our operating model. So how do all of these teams and these functions and these systems collaborate? And in all the various different ways that we didn't even know that they are collaborating, but they are collaborating. And it's the way that work is being executed. It's every non-trivial activity includes more than one resource. And then how these resources work together is going to be a key factor in the effectiveness and the efficiency of what is produced. And that is not something that you can gain from just looking at the individual resources. You now need to look at all of the processes and collaborations across those resources. And that's what process intelligence brings to the table, on top of the, let's say, I want to say traditional, but by now, I mean, we're talking about a technology that we've already launched 15 years ago or 20 years ago, if you look at pure process performance management. But it's just one critical tool in the toolbox.
So then, Eric, do I replace BI with PI? Like tell me about how I operationalize a practice that gives me the information that I need to make decisions at the right level at the right time.
Yeah.
What does this mean?
So first of all, the fact that they're all analytical capabilities doesn't necessarily mean that they need to be all in the same place. The people that are responsible for IT systems, they're in a specific function. They're called IT. They need analytics to understand if their systems are operating as expected, as designed. Who is going to use process intelligence? Well, it's people that are responsible for the ways of working, the internal and external journeys, and the end-to-end processes across the organization. Those will be your process managers. Those will be your service managers. So you need to make sure that this skill, this capability is available for process managers, for people running that particular dimension of the operating model. And absolutely, this is part of a larger, as you showed with the iceberg example. This is going to be part of a larger capability, which is not just about getting the insights, but also making that actionable, doing something about it, designing better ways of working, testing those better ways of working before you roll them out, and then tracking if the success of those improvements is actually coming. And if not, going back to the drawing table. And that's a continuous process. We all know this.
Yes. And so with that in mind, I don't know, folks, from my perspective, that's busted. But the question that comes back to everybody is I want to reach out, because there's people that are hammering the chat with some really interesting ideas. Tell me about your experience, and specifically, what are challenges that you have in the organization that you've been trying to solve with BI, business intelligence, or PI, process intelligence? What types of challenges have you struggled to solve with business intelligence and process intelligence? I got a couple of terms already that people have been putting out there. Please throw your answers in the chat. What are you trying to solve? What have you struggled to solve? And I see things like from Jenny, processing without bottlenecks, successful actual values and target KPIs to achieve the strategic goals in an organization. I think that's really important. I like to talk about the words an unbroken chain of influence from strategic pillar to individual action. And that requires a whole lot of connection. But that's something that we it's not just a promise of process intelligence. It's kind of the purpose of process intelligence, which is to take that individual action that is resulting in an outcome you can see in a process intelligence dashboard, that results in an outcome you can see in a process performance, that results in the achievement of a target that links eventually to a strategic goal, right? That whole unbroken chain of influence also provides meaning and value to the organization. I also saw a comment earlier that I think is really interesting from Leopoldo, which is intelligence being a misunderstood term. Not what we know, instead what we do not know, and how we learn about what to do when facing the unknown.
Yeah.
Your business reality is that you have set out on a course. You have a product or products and services that you have desired to release to the market. How they are used, how you are delivering them, how the internal organization is supporting itself with the capabilities required to deliver them. I would say that, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong here, Eric, but it's a kind of a loose fit between what you thought you were going to do and what you're actually having to do in reality.
Yeah, no, I fully agree,
And the
100%.
question is how we can A, tighten up on things so we can better align to best practices, or B, learn from the execution of the actual end executors in your business to discover what new capabilities we could use as an organization or how we could better address some of the challenges.
Yeah.
So this is busted, but Eric, let's move on to the next of our 4 big myths today, and ask away, because this is I think the myth that I was going to look at.
You've been in this field long enough to have seen, how things fail and how things succeed. So I think one of the comments I get a lot is, how do we organize around process intelligence? So how do we set this up? Is this do we build a project team around this, or who should own it? How do you organize it? What kind of capability is it? What's your idea?
Here's the thing. I hear this all the time. People tell me, hey, process intelligence. Well, I guess I'll set up a project and then we can start it, do some process intelligence, and then finish it. They tell me, oh, yeah, we got a process intelligence, just like a group that we've set up for a pilot on this, and that's all we're doing. And I think we've achieved our goal of having done process intelligence. And I think that's a complete misuse of the term, of the practice, and of the resources you're assigning to this. I see process intelligence as a lifestyle rather than just a project. And there's a few things to do that make that, and there's a few reasons why you want to do that and make that important. Number one is, when you looked at that process lifecycle iceberg I showed earlier, there's a reason why the arrows continued around the curve. And I don't think that process intelligence as a project is as effective, or even, it runs into a lot of risks, because your business is constantly evolving. To take a snapshot in time and say that this is the only thing we want to analyze, get a result from, and then we've had our value, we can move on. That's leaving a ton of value on the table, and that's risking that the insights you've gathered will become perishable very quickly. Talking about perishable insights have a very, very short length of duration that they're valuable. But the truth is, in the process intelligence, in a change environment, your previous insights from the process mining work you did, they're no longer valid the minute you change your process. And so looking back at that as historical, remember the times when we used to do it bad, and now we probably do it good. That's not going to give you what you want. So instead, you need to set up a team that is continuous in how it approaches process intelligence. That's checking back, getting feedback from people who are performing the process that you implemented, and then doing the next wave of analysis or continuous analysis. And sure, they can have ebbs and flows, but first and foremost, setting up a team with ownership, clear ownership of the process intelligence discipline, either as a federated model, so in each different department, or as a shared service group, which sometimes is good because it centralizes knowledge, and sometimes it's risky because it kind of walls them off from the business that they're trying to serve. But either way, seeing this as a continuous delivery model. So that means staffing it up with the right types of people, people who are experts in BPM, people who understand process mining, people who have some understanding of data science, and people who can communicate with the people who are sourcing information, IT, and be able to bring those together under a leadership structure that is aligned with strategic pillars of improvement. Operational excellence is a good example as a pillar that you're trying to achieve. That's the way that you can deliver it, not just as a one-time single-serving airplane food, but rather as a hearty meal that will sustain your company for weeks, days, months to come, as you continuously develop your processes and refresh on it. Eric, I think you have some thoughts on this as well.
Well, so you just mentioned operational excellence, and whereas this is typically a permanent capability, a function, a team in organizations, the way that they approach improvements is generally in a project mode. A problem occurs, you go in, you do your analytics, you design an improvement, you implement it or you have others implement it, and then you fly off to the next problem elsewhere. And this is, I think this is what you're describing as well. This has been a practice in operational excellence for a long time. And I think it does just, if you have to bring in the top team to fix something, to analyze and fix something, then I think you're already too late.
Yeah.
You should have caught that trend, that downward trend already earlier, and caught it and addressed it. And this is exactly what you said before. It needs to be far more continuous, which means that it shouldn't, the skills shouldn't sit with a centralized team that just jumps in a first-class flight to a site somewhere worldwide to fix a problem. No, it should be locally. It should be in the local teams where the business is being executed.
Yeah, developing that capability it feels like it's time consuming and expensive. And the truth is, I mean, you'll probably agree with me here, it is time consuming, it can be expensive, but the value, the ROI it provides is incredibly high. And let me give you a specific example why it's not just a project. So I work with a national retailer years ago. And one of the things they were struggling with is they wanted to make sure that their supply chain had a chain of cold for their perishable food. So I think they started the conversation around perishable fish. They were moving fish from the warehouses to the distribution centers to the stores, right? And they did a one and done project. Let's fix the fish problem. Well, guess what? Within 6 months, there were new complaints because other types of food were spoiling. And since they fixed the fish problem, they actually created a whole bunch of other problems, cascade failures, as a result of changing this one process for this one product.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked with them. We actually spent almost a year completely transforming the organization to a continuous model, which was, instead of seeing this as because they had a Six Sigma team that was really hot about like going in and they use all these military metaphors. We're a SEAL team and we're going to go in and we're going to, kill this problem dead. And then we're going to come back out and it's no problem left. But the truth is those problems regrow. We instead took that and had that team become a continuous delivery center for the organization, and then group practices in each of the lines of business that they served. So they had their finger on the pulse with process intelligence all the time. So now they're monitoring dashboards were focused on business processes that they were looking to monitor across the supply chain. And then they were able to predict where their trends were looking bad and there was going to be an issue. And so now they turned it from one product that they'd fixed a single serving problem on the perishable insight of perishable food and turn it into a capability that actually meant that all of their perishable food was protected. Their supply chain was better protected, and they can also learn and grow from that. It was it's a time consuming and costly project, but they were losing millions and millions a year in spoiled food. And the value of that project was, 4, 5, 6 times because the cost of it was so much lower than the slippage of their food. So have you seen anything like that, Eric?
So, well, I think listening to you explaining this, I think we can conclude that running process intelligence initiatives as a project, I think that's a myth. I think we've busted that.
Well, then, Eric, let's talk a little bit about the next piece of the puzzle, because I hear a lot of people say to me that process intelligence is just about automation, right? We're looking to create RPA systems using process intelligence so I can automate out workers and take away the knowledge worker jobs associated with it. Is process intelligence just for the purpose of automation?
Of course it is. No, I'm lying. No, obviously, if you're in the business of selling automation solutions, then process intelligence you will frame as supporting that particular function. But everyone knows that everyone that has worked in processes, there are so many different ways of improving processes. Sometimes getting rid of particular processes altogether is a solution. Fixing it, not the process itself, but fixing the governance, which could lead to removing processes altogether. Sometimes the processes should not be in-house. They should be. You could partner. You could bring in a service. So automation is one of many options in order to make processes run more effectively or more efficiently. And obviously, in this day and age, it's crazy to not talk about automation. We are digitalizing our processes like crazy. So obviously, it's a massive reason why we are using processes, why we are applying process intelligence nowadays. But it's not the only one. Definitely not.
Yeah, and I think that the key here for me is that process change is a combination of automation change and practice change.
Mm-hmm.
You have to see it as that. You cannot automate away a bad process that is being acted on by human beings, where the humans are necessary for the decision making. To give you a good example, people want to just AIify everything these days. Oh, we're going to use AI. We're going to use all this AI to do, well, AI decision making, particularly management decision making. I mean, I think there's an old quote about that. Can't be held responsible, can't make a management decision, right? So there are people who need to act on this. And you ask yourself a question, can I automate it in a way exclusively so that the people don't have to do anything, or that they know exactly what to do? And the answer is obviously no. The human being behind it, doesn't matter how much paint you put on the wall or digital SOPs you distribute. If the person behind the desk doesn't want to do the job, so process intelligence also involves change management. Right?
Yep.
As you look to improve your processes, you look to improve your practices, you need to be working with the people. And so ultimately, this becomes a continuous delivery practice that leads to practice change, the way of working change, and leads to collaboration with the capability change, which could involve system changes. It also talks to experience, which is like, I work with a big financial institution here in the Americas that was all focused. One of the big projects that they were working on that ended up being a practice that they had continuously delivered was all about how do I improve my employee experience. And so they were getting feedback. So employees were literally leaving surveys and comments that they were aggregating to try and understand the common concerns. But they could also mine out the internal system accesses and the steps that were being performed in those internal systems and how long things were taking. A good example is, how long did it take a new employee to get a laptop? I mean, that didn't show up on day one. In fact, a lot of people were sitting on their hands waiting for things to show up, or when somebody needed to do procurement for another piece or service they needed, that it would take them a long time. They would get frustrated, and this was leading to burnout and ultimately to people leaving the organization. This is the kind of thing that you need to work to automate, but also need to work with the people along the way. You're building the procure to pay process is not entirely automated, and also process intelligence doesn't require it all be automated. There's one other piece that we talk about in process intelligence. It's more than just process mining, and for some organizations, they are ready for this, some are not, which is task mining, understanding the individual human tasks that are being done. The answer to solving the problem of when you discover a long-running process in task mining is not to RPA it. Because if you automate a bad process, guess what? You're buying a problem. You're just going to do that bad process more frequently and faster, but the process is still bad. Instead, we look at this as a blueprinting for a new way of working through process modeling and through implementation in standard operating procedures. Hey, folks, do this differently, or don't do this. That's a much better solution than just the sort of shotgun method of just, hey, automate everything, RPA everything, AI everything. I think I can call this myth.
The other thing is that despite the fact that we've automated a lot now, it doesn't mean that we fully understand how all of the various different systems work together, particularly because at the endpoints of our processes, even if we've automated everything end to end within the process, the endpoint is still a customer, it's still a partner, it's still an employee. There are still people being serviced by those processes, and they can trip up the system as well. They will have entry points across different channels into different processes, and it's this web of interconnected processes, even if they're all automated, that you still cannot completely control by just looking at the business logic of the individual systems that automate it. You have to look at the end-to-end collaboration between all of these and interoperability between all of these different systems. And this is one of the applications of process intelligence that I think is much more prevalent today than it was years ago. And the other one is, as I said, if the endpoint is a customer, you don't only want to look at the end-to-end processes, you want to look at it from a journey perspective. So how does the customer traverse through all of our different entry points, our different channels, or different processes and systems? And this is a completely new area, I think, where we are finding that process mining can be really critical in understanding parts of the journey. And hopefully, as we learn more about how to apply process intelligence to journeys, we will be able to map out and to continuously improve those journeys as well. So I'm really excited about it. So it's in a sense, it's the thing that we did 15, 20 years ago. At the same time, we're applying it to a completely digitalized world. So it is different.
I agree.
Is it only about automation? I would say no.
Exactly. That's busted to me.
Busted.
But there are some angry men here, and I think you got the last question here for the topics.
Yeah. So, I mean, we've seen this with business intelligence, and even more so with process intelligence. A lot of organizations are really reluctant to get on board, and the reason is because they think it's too hard. You need a double PhD in order to understand what the hell is happening in your process. Is that the case? Do you think that this is true?
And there are a lot of people with PhDs who tell you need a PhD to do the thing. Welcome to gatekeeping, friends. The truth is, it should not be that way, and is not that way. So historically, from a lot of the conversations I've had, people talk about process mining as a need for a high level of education in data science. You need a bunch of data scientists to go through and help you to get, curtail the challenges of very complicated data structures and do programming and do intense transformations and all these sorts of things. They tell you all these things. And I wonder, once again, if you check the credentials of people who are telling you that, I bet you they're either selling or having the credentials that they're saying you require. We really believe in the idea of democratizing process intelligence. So let's talk about what democratizing process intelligence means. We believe, and I personally believe strongly, that you should be able to interact with process as somebody who can be a contributor, somebody who can contextualize process, somebody who can propose solutions to process, who can understand the process mining insights and be able to create a better way of working with basic computer skills and a good attitude. Because the answer is, a lot of these people have great business knowledge, or they're great thinkers, the people who are driving forward great ideation on how to do process better. They're problem solvers, right? We need to let them in to what has historically been a walled off city of the technical work that goes into process intelligence. So I would say that process intelligence is no longer, and particularly process mining, is no longer the realm of the technical only. Quite the opposite. I would say there are a few different things that have made this abundantly clear. The first is that the modern technology platforms, and of course, Eric and I both work for Eris by Software AG. Those modern technology platforms incorporate a lot of tools to lower the barrier to entry and to make less technical contribution more valuable. Let's talk about those two pieces of the puzzle. Lowering the barrier to entry means rendering information in a way that is business user accessible. So if I'm looking at a mined out process, the visualization should be something that I either intuitively understand or have tools like AI to assist me in understanding, so I know what to do about it. I don't have to go and inquire with deep experts. Things like a Chat GPT style, Gen AI, help me to understand what I could look for, and when I'm looking for those things, what I'm finding, and help me to figure out ways that I could propose improvements for that. So using AI to lower that barrier to entry so people can get started with the conversation. The second piece of the puzzle is making their non-technical contribution valuable. And the answer behind that focuses less on the process mining side and more on the process ideation, blueprinting side. We need to develop, and with the Aris platform has done this, collaboration and contribution tools that make it so that your business expertise can more easily be slotted into a format that makes sense to you without having to be an expert in the methodology or the tool. So from our perspective, that comes with the idea of fact sheets and forms. You fill out a form, you add your business context, and something that becomes part of the conversation around a process model or a piece of architecture or what have you. And that contribution is incredibly valuable. You add your feedback, you put in a thread of comments, you trigger change requests, you participate in the governance process. All of that becomes a valuable contribution into this process intelligence lifecycle. And yes, sure, at some point in time, somebody with technical expertise had to set a lot of this up. I get that. Not discounting technical expertise. Hey, folks who have it, love ya. But there's also a lot less of you than there are people who can contribute. We have this idea of all do some versus some do all. Some do all being you rely on a very small, talented, highly paid, very technical, extremely in demand group of people to do all the work. They're the ones going and doing all the interviews. They're the ones going and collecting all the information. They're doing all the integration work. They're doing all of the data processing work, the data analysis work. They're setting all the context. They're doing all the ideation. They're creating all the documentation. They're rolling all that out, and they're monitoring and tracking everything that's being done. This small team is doing everything. And boy, that's a recipe for burnout. Versus some do all. Versus all do some. All do some says, what if instead of a small team, all do some, everybody contributed a little bit from their perspective to this process intelligence lifecycle? Your data architects help to give you an understanding of the structure, and then your business architect helps to give you the perspective on the practice that's being done. Your end users help to give you feedback and understanding of what the realities are, and then your end users came in to contextualize the data mining you saw from process and task mining, and then they help to do ideation and explanation. Here's why we do this, and here's what could be done better here. And all of your different consumer groups came together and actually informed you by increasing the fidelity of the content you're capturing in your design phase. I think that process intelligence is for all and can be for all, but from your perspective. Meet people where they are. And that's why democratizing is such an important word, particularly for me and particularly for us here at Software AG. So a bit of a tirade, but Eric, please step in.
I think obviously the process intelligence is intended for people who understand their business, but they need to understand what is going on under the hood. They need to understand what are the inner workings of my processes. But you start with an understanding of your business. What I think is different in the way that we approach process intelligence today compared to in the past is you don't need a mathematics degree in order to build a model to understand what is happening. That is done for you. That is what we deliver in our technology. That is what the AI companion will now allow you to do. It'll allow you to ask questions as a normal person, and you will get answers in normal language rather than having to translate everything into mathematics. So those days are over, and I think that is the key thing. If you understand your business and you know your processes, then process intelligence will give you that additional capability, that additional skill to look under the hood, to look at the inner workings of your processes, and to get actionable insights from that. And that is new, I think.
It is new, and I wanted to, the thing that I talk about a lot is how scary a blank page is. I understand blank pages can be really scary. Blank pages aren't always actually blank, though. From my perspective, we see a lot of these blank pages really are just full of stuff you don't understand. And so a good example of that is, if I want to understand a process that I've got, let's say, mined out and be able to figure out what I should do next, I don't require the level of technical expertise that would be an advanced math degree. It's much easier for me to just say, hey, I would like to instead take a look at my process and ask AI, hey, what are the issues? And have it tell me in natural language Well, here's what you should look at. Oh, I've got a high connection duration. So I'm waiting a lot for invoices to be processed. I've got a low number of connections. So I've got an exception process here. And I don't need to be a deep expert in the data underneath this to
Oh,
make that really work. Once again, natural language lowered the barrier to entry to allow people to be part of the process by simply giving them an explanation of what they're seeing on the screen. And that's really powerful. So as I said, a blank screen can be pretty scary, but so can a full screen that you simply don't understand.
exactly. There we go.
So I think if I were to go back and say,
Is it hard?
is it
Do you
hard?
need a math degree?
I
What
think
do
it's
you believe?
at times, but do you need an advanced degree? Heck no. I think that this myth in particular is busted.
I think so as well.
So, where does this leave us today, right? This leaves us with the idea of four things we've covered off that are myths and misconceptions about process intelligence. And there are so many more that we've heard along our way. You know, things like it's only for large enterprises. Nah, process intelligence can be applied in any level of enterprise. You have to have the like a will to do it, an executive alignment, and it. We heard the misconception that it's just a fancy term for BPM. No, it's more than just the old school BPM of process modeling, and it's a replacement for other types of process management tools. No, there's the process management is there's so many other types of things you have to do as part of a life cycle. This is not a replacement for those things. But the four things we covered today, is it BI 2.0? No, it's something different, but but it's also something good, and you can add those two together to make something really cool for coarse monitoring of sort of aggregated view of the organization and granular monitoring, fine monitoring of your process itself. Is it a simple project? No. Process intelligence, as I like to say, is a lifestyle. It is a continuous process that you set up a capability for in the organization, and you continuously deliver it and check back to make sure that it's hitting its marks. Is process intelligence just for automation? No. Process intelligence is all about practice change. Automation is one component of that. And is process intelligence an advanced degree only? Is it hard? Well, it can be difficult. You have broken processes sometimes, but it's accessible. And yeah, that challenge is something that you have to mount together. You're doing it as an organization, as a team, rather than asking for some to do all. You ask all to do some.
Absolutely.
So I've been getting some great questions in the Q&A chat. I got to tell you, we want to ask them. So Eric, I'm going to throw them your way from our Q&A. Highlight them on the screen. Give me your thoughts on this. In particular, let's highlight the question of let's highlight the what the how can we this is a really good one. How can we make process modeling as sexy as mining? I love it, Ingo. That is a great question. I like it a lot. Eric, what do you think about how do you make process modeling sexy?
Well, so obviously you can steal some of the shine of mining, and you can use mining to discover processes and kickstart your modeling. So that's one point. Then obviously, dragging symbols onto a canvas and creating the connections can be a little bit tedious sometimes, especially if you have a lot of work. So this is the other thing that we are now introducing in Eris. I'm not sure if other products do this, do something similar, but you can actually now just use a transcript of an interview about what the process looks like, or just your write-up, your textual write-up, an SOP text. Just jam it into the product, and it will create the process for you. Now, I don't know what your definition of sexy is, but at least it's a very, very convenient way of kickstarting your modeling work.
It is, and actually, if I can add another thing, how do I make process modeling as sexy as mining? Well, one thing that I really like about process modeling is I first and foremost, I love the ability to describe a process and have something sort of immediately come up. And oh my goodness, I love this. It was exactly what I described. It's really cool for people to see on the page what they were just describing. But the sexy part that I'm seeing nowadays, and I'm going to share my screen just a little bit because some new capabilities, some new developments in how people do things with modeling make it pretty sexy. And where I see that happening a lot is in the use of AI to help with process modeling. So let me share my screen a little bit, and you'll see a blank page. Could be as scary as anything else. But wait, what's this little AI thing here? And it says, make me a procure to pay process. And people really think this is sexy because guess what? In a couple of seconds, it generates a procure to pay process for you. And it can insert that into the model. And now suddenly and abruptly, you have a model ready to go. You can move things around. It's, oh my goodness, it's a fully operable process model. Using AI in process modeling as a draft creator is pretty sexy. Alternately, what you can do is copy and paste large blocks of text. A good example of that is I've got a process over here that I found in my SharePoint that someone's described that says, hey, here's how we do leave request. So I want to take a vacation. You do a whole bunch of things. Direct supervisor does this, then blah, 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 generate a model from somebody's block of text they sent me. And then tomorrow they go, oh my goodness, this is what I sent you. And it looks so cool. Oh man, look at this. I got a whole model ready to go with all my exception paths, submitting the request, assessing the impact, notifying employees, sending the rejection notifications or approval notifications. Oh yeah, that's pretty sexy. So yeah, we can make process modeling sexy too. And also process modeling as a lever for change. I mean, I find that pretty sexy. I think that's cool. You can say, hey, this is how we communicate with people. This is our home page. This is how the process works. And let me share that with everybody. So I love that a lot. It's a great question. Thank you again to Ingo. By the way, you can ask questions along the way, and I have a little question at the end for everybody here. Myself, Eric, another question here that I know you are somebody very familiar with. Talk to me about process maturity assessments.
What about process maturity assessments? What a good question. So I think process maturity. So this is we were going to have a spirited discussion, and this is one of the topics that gets spirited when I'm involved. I think they are a blessing and a curse.
Mm-hmm.
I think process maturity assessments are helpful in gauging where are you with your with the level of process capability that you have. I think where process maturity assessments may be overpromising a little bit is the actionability of it. Because in practice, how does process maturity grow? It is a function of the complexity of the organization, the regulatory pressure on the organization. Mm-hmm. It's a function of the competitive pressure that an organization will feel in terms of which will translate in a rate of change, a pace of change that you will need to keep up with. So there are so many factors that define the level of process maturity that you require, but also there are so many different levers that you have to pull in order to get to that process maturity. Mm-hmm. We should probably do a webinar around this. This ties in so much with some of the other questions that I saw, like how do you pitch BPM to an executive? So how do I explain to my management why we need process intelligence? A process maturity does not really convey to someone outside of the process community why it is needed. So that purpose is, I think, what is missing from most of these assessments. There could be a load of compliance reasons why you need to map your processes or why you need to monitor your processes closely. Sometimes it's a transformational change. Sometimes it's just inefficiencies because of years and years of neglect or acquisitions that were never completely merged, or maybe merged too well into the organization. So I think the way to assess what maturity you need, and the way to explain why you need things like process intelligence to make it happen, is to find a purpose, which means addressing the pain which is in your processes.
Yeah, and by the way, Eric, I think that this goes very well into another one of our questions, which, so I'm going to put it on the screen. We're not going to answer today because there's people who apparently want this enough. How do I pitch a student executive at BPM? How it's a value? Like, hey, folks, people, there's a bunch of thumbs up.
Yeah.
People want to know how do you pitch this. That's the thing, everybody. When you leave us feedback like this, guess what happens? We do this again. Right.
Yeah.
Eric and I love talking to our wonderful friends out there in the community. I think we're going to put that question into the next. But if you wanted to give people a teaser, what's a 30-second? How do I pitch the value of process intelligence to an executive? People are crying on the line. They want to know. Please.
Well, the key thing about process intelligence is it shows you the inner workings of your operating model. It allows a variety of different stakeholders, different managers across the organization, across your end-to-end processes, to be on the same page with regards to how are you producing your products, how you're producing results. Without this, without having this intelligence, without having the analytics, the evidence to show you what is actually happening in your processes, it is excruciatingly difficult to get all of the stakeholders in a room discussing how to action the solution to your problems. So process intelligence really is the oil in the engine that will help you to transform and optimize far, far quicker than you would be able to do it without process intelligence. So how does it help an organization to have process intelligence? It will make you so much more agile.
Mm-hmm.
It will bring down all of the analytics and all of the politics from months and months and months of discussions to just getting the evidence on the table and making a decision about it.
I love the word evidence, because you use the word evidence. I use that word evidence a lot. I think about the dichotomy between evidence-based decision making and explanation-based decision making. Oh, bad performance. I can explain. Let me just tell you a story. Let me spin a yarn. Let me use some best practice information I found from the internet or chat GPT. Let me talk to a consultant guy I know who can just give me an explanation. That's fine. Here's what you should do. And I feel like the big pitch for me is always like, how certain are you that the approach you are taking is based on the data that you are getting? And they go, I mean, it's like, okay, so are you responding to the realities of your business, or are you making this up? And they go, wow, I know pretty well. And it's like, how certain are you? And there's this uncertainty thing that you talk about a lot in like psychology, the comfort with uncertainty. I feel like process intelligence is kind of like the balm for that, because you're achieving a level of evidence-based certainty that lets you make clear-eyed decisions. And as a result, your chances of making the right decision are astronomically higher. And that's my pitch always. And executives, as much as they might come off as a really confident in your all hands, they're worried too, just like you. They want to make sure they're doing the right thing. They don't want to get called to task for making a bad decision. Process intelligence might be their best friend. And I think we only have time for one more question. And it's an interesting question I've never actually gotten. Sorry, this is not the one. This is one right here. Is there an initiative to reduce the different terms that we use, BI and PI and all these sorts of things, and the concept of different frameworks, in order to get rid of redundancies and make things less academic so that only the expert knows and more human? Klaus, that's a great question. I want to respond by saying there are some realities to the world of enterprise sales that, in my opinion, suck. They do. They are, people try to create this perception or this hype, this buzz that makes it feel exclusive to come on board with our new 3-letter acronym. That's a sales and marketing technique that people often have. There is a second technique that people I find in academic spaces have to define things by terminology that is gated behind their particular community. Not always functional. Sometimes it's just we use things we know because that's something that we like, and also it makes us feel good to know that what this particular term means. Every time I have to explain to somebody what BPM means, yeah, I get a little hit of dopamine. Oh, look at me, I'm so smart, right? So there are some inclinations to do that from a commercial perspective and from a personal perspective. But I think you're right in this question, what it implies, which is that the more we can harmonize on a certain set of terms or an easy explanation, plain language way of explaining things, the more we can do that, the more we can feel inviting to people who are not already part of our community. We do that in Eris with AI a lot of the time. When you look at process in like mining and the AI in it, we take terminology that would normally been gated behind advanced levels of knowledge and make it plain language. And in fact, the advent of AI and the introduction in a large number of enterprise contexts, I think, kind of does that. When you have natural language explaining things that previously would have been explained using complicated terms, and easy and quick access to explain complicated terms in a simple fashion, so you can feel involved. I think we are lowering the like intellectual barrier to entry.
Mhm.
But term harmonization, I don't know. Eric, what do you think about that?
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, these terms they serve a purpose, which is not necessarily beneficial to the end consumers of those terms. I think it makes a lot of sense to rethink how you want to pitch those technologies, those capabilities in your own organization. And you might want to. So I can give you an example. Several years ago, like 8 years ago, we launched a big initiative in the Middle East, where a lot of government agencies were looking for ways to optimize the customer satisfaction with
Mhm.
government services. So rather than saying, well, you need process intelligence, you need process mining, you need this, you need that, what we said is what we will provide to you is a service visibility platform. It will provide visibility on how your services are performing, and it will give you actionable insights on how to improve your services. So we call it service visibility. So that was a really, specific example. And I think in every organization, you need to sort of connect to terminology which makes sense in the organization, which people understand. Just get rid of the terminology if it's in your way.
Exactly.
But I
I
don't
like
think,
that.
but I don't think that the market is going to do it for. I think trying to harmonize across all the different vendors and pundits in the market, I think that's nearly impossible.
But well, it's a bit of a negative term to leave us off on. I got to tell you, folks, this has been a lot of fun. There's even more questions we haven't answered. Keep them coming. After this, I think you'll probably be receiving a survey, hopefully asking you how you liked it or how you hated it. That's all good from our perspective. If you have any comments and feedback, you can reach both of us. I'm just JM. My name, my first name dot last name at softwareag.com. Eric is the same.
Same here.
Feel free to reach out to us and reach out to us on LinkedIn. We'd love to connect with all of you after the webinar and have a conversation about this. I mean, we represent for the platform Eris, but the practices that Eris inspires: process intelligence, business transformation, operational excellence, operational resiliency. These things are important for what we see the market and what we see people needing as part of the evolution of our business landscape. This is an exciting time. I'd love to continue the conversation with all of y'all, but Eric, it was really great to hang out with you for an hour today and chat through these things. Thank you for coming on this wild ride with me, and thank you to all of our audience members for participating. Amazing questions, joining in the fun. We will be keeping on these fireside chats all fall long and into the spring of next year at least. So come on back for the next one, and until then, have yourself a wonderful afternoon or evening wherever you are, and we will see you in the next one. Bye, everybody.
Bye.